is March. Happy New Month. Hi everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Aisha. Thank you for coming back if you're a returning subscriber, and if you're new here, make sure to hit the subscribe button, because here we talk about books and everything that interests me. So March is the month that houses the International Women's Day, and it is Tuesday the 8th of March. But March is also International Women's History Month. So March is basically women. Femme March. In March, we read women. Every day we read women, but in March, we especially read women. So there's also this reading thing going on Bookstagram that is called Korean March. So you know how we had January in Japan, we have Korean March. So it would be nice to read women, but Korean as well. That would be so cool. So because March basically highlights women, I will be recommending 10 books that are written by women that you've likely never heard of or never read before. If you've read any of these books, props to you. You are reading as diversely as possible, and we'd love to see that. But if you've not heard of or read any of these books, be sure to keep them on your radar, add them to your TBR list, and pick them up whenever you can, because trust me, these books, they are elite. Pure. So before I selected these 10 books, I checked Goodreads to know how many people have reviewed it, how many people have read it, just the basic stuff. And I use Goodreads because that's the platform that most people use to record their reading. The first book that I'll be highlighting is called The Women's Courtyard by Khadija Mastur, translated from Urdu, I believe, to English by Daisy Rockwell. So this book was set in the 1940s as the partition of India was approaching, and it focuses on a girl called Aliyah that is confined to the inner courtyard of a family home, along with her older sister and a very irritable mother, while the men of the family throw themselves to the politics that is going on due to the approaching partition. Trust that we have an enthusiastic and inquisitive main character. Aliyah wants more for herself, more than, the pettiness of the inner courtyard. And she wants to be involved in the politics. She wants to educate herself. She wants to engage in the stimulating conversations that the men in her family are having. And all of this is happening along with the looming partition. So basically, this book just follows the life of Aliyah, the women in her family. So we see how partition influences the dynamics of the inner courtyard. You begin to see the color of the inner courtyard before the partition. You see what India was before the partition, and you see what it looks like after the partition, when Aliyah's family had to move from India to Pakistan. So on Goodreads, The Women's Courtyard has 963 ratings with just 92 reviews. This book is a classic, and it was translated from Urdu, which means it is a book that was translated so that we readers of English language can have access to more exciting narratives. I am surprised that it has just under 1,000 ratings. This book deserves more, and pick up if you can. The second book on my list is The Emancipation of Women, An African Perspective by Florence Abena-Dolphin. This book has just 5 ratings on Goodreads and 1 review, and that review was written by me. This book is basically a collection of essays that was written by the former head of Ghanaian Council of Women Development. So basically in this book, she describes and explains how feminism in the West and its theories might not be sufficient to fully emancipate African women, and the kind of feminism and liberation that we want in our respective countries. Florence Abena-Dolphin is basically telling us that why feminism can't work for us. It's not as inclusive because it does not take into account the economic differences, the social differences, and the cultural differences. So in my review of this book, which I'm going to read briefly now, I stated that Florence Abena-Dolphin explained why the tactics employed in Western societies, particularly passing bills and legislation, wouldn't yield adequate solutions to the issues faced in African societies. because many of the practices that target women are deeply entrenched into some of our cultural practices. And to fully emancipate women, we have to ensure that we give them, tools to help them stay connected to their culture, but at the same time root out the things and the elements in their culture that keep them confined. This book was published in 2000, and many of the points that Florence Abinadolphin highlighted in the book are still very relevant today in our fight for women emancipation, especially in places that the emancipation of women at a grassroots level needs to consider the cultural influences. So I think this book is very important. We are trying to, get into feminist theories and just understand emancipation of women. So this is a couple of days later. That last time that I was filming, the sun went out, so I could not film. So the next book that I'll be discussing is Elsewhere Home by Leila Bleila. And Elsewhere Home is a collection of 13 short stories that looks into the life of the African immigrants, but specifically from the Sudanese point of view. So one thing that I like about this collection is that it depicts in several different stories the immigrant experience. So we're talking the loneliness that comes with migrating to a whole different country, culture shock, the homesickness. There is that feeling of survival guilt that might come with you migrating. One other thing that I really like in this collection is that there was a story that depicts the Muslim love story but mixed with migration. I can't remember the story because I read this book a couple of years ago. I think I read it in 2019. Leila Bleila has a way of writing Muslim representation that if the stories or if a novel or the story she's trying to tell does not focus on the Muslimness of her characters, she doesn't put it in the front. So if you're looking for like nuanced Muslim representation that doesn't feel like tokenism, then definitely pick Leila Bleila's books. But yeah, Elsewhere Home is one of my underrated books. And on Goodreads, this brilliant collection has just 567 ratings with just 130 reviews. So the next book I'll be talking about is Opening Spaces, Contemporary African Women's Writing, edited by Yvonne Vera. So this book is actually the first time that I encountered Leila Bleila's writing. She won what we know as the Kane Prize for African fiction writing. She won the first edition for it in 1999 for one of her stories. I believe the story is The Museum, and the museum features in this collection, this anthology. And there are also stories from Seychelles, Mauritania, Rwanda, Madagascar, Nigeria, Ghana. In the introduction of this anthology, Yvonne Vera states that this book, Opening Spaces, sought to celebrate recent writings at the time of publication by African women united in their views through the prism of a combined womanhood. The stories in this anthology, helped me solidify my love for anthology, as at the time that I was reading this book, I read it in 2018. So in one of the stories titled The Girl Who Can by Ama Ata-Aido, a Ghanaian author, the story touches on the subject of policing the female body through the eyes of a child, and it uses that childish innocence and intelligence that children have to fully drive home the ridiculousness of policing female bodies. If you're looking to explore stories by African women from different parts of the continent, not just the West, then definitely pick up this anthology. It's a good way to introduce yourself to African women writing. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, so Opening Spaces has just 49 ratings on Goodreads and 11 reviews. Like, why does this book have 49 ratings? Just 49. So the next book that I'll be discussing is All the Women in My Family Sing, Women Write the Word, Essays on Equality, Justice and Freedom. Also an anthology edited by Deborah Santana. So I read this book in 2018. Yes, I also read it in 2018. I read it in June, and I read Opening Spaces in July. So again, this is also one of the anthologies that solidified my love and my obsession with anthologies. My favorite thing about this anthology is that every step of the way, the writing, the marketing, the publishing, the cover design, every single thing that has to do with this book was done by women, people that identify as women. The book has 239 ratings on Goodreads, and it just has 39 reviews. There are stories from different writers who are identified as African American, Asian American, Chicana, Native American, Cameroonian, South African, Korean, different stories. So all the women in my family sing contains 69 beautifully written, well detailed, succinct essays. This collection is gold. So in my review of the book, I wrote that the essay is grouped into 8 different subsections. Some of them touched on identity, migration, career, beauty, family, and even illnesses. Because I remember that it was the first time I encountered writing about fibromyalgia. Oh my goodness, the sky is gorgeous. Some of the writers are as young as 20, some of them are as old as 65. So we even have like different, point of views that comes with age. Definitely pick up this anthology if you're able to. It is criminally underrated. So the next book that I'll be highlighting is The 100 Words of Salaga by Aisha Aruna Atta. This book has 799 ratings on Goodreads, which is good. Like, thankfully, I'm happy that it's slowly getting the recognition that it deserves. It explores very important topics, which is the intra-slave trade in the African continent. The book is based on the lives of 2 ladies called Amina and Wurche. I can't pronounce her name, sorry. So Amina is a very reserved, simple girl that was kidnapped from a village called Botu and forced into slavery, but internal slavery. So this is not about transatlantic slavery. This is slavery that occurred within the confines of the continent. But obviously it is not laced with that undertone of race. So while being sold and bought and rebought and sold, Amina was brought into the household of a rebellious princess known as Wurche. So amidst all of the power struggle, the quest, the financial problems, and dealing with foreign powers that comes with colonization, Wurche and Amina developed a friendship, even though their power dynamics is obviously, it's very tricky. One of the reasons that I like this book is the fact that it touches on internal slavery within the continent. It explores even sexuality, interracial relationships at the time. And the best part is that Amina actually features in the recent book that Aisha Aruna wrote. The recent book is called The Deep Blue Between, and it is about the twin sisters of Amina. So Amina is the first child, and she has 2 younger sisters who are twins. And in that book, Aisha Aruna explores how slavery builds this link between the African continent and the Caribbean. If you are looking to explore, narratives about internal slavery in the African continent, definitely pick up The 100 Words of Salaga. Another book that I want to talk about is again a short story collection called Look How Happy I'm Making You by Polly Rosenwake. I hope I pronounced that name correctly. So fortunately, this book has 1,195 ratings on Goodreads and just 170 reviews. So Look How Happy I'm Making You contains 12 short story collection that explores various versions of motherhood. So there are stories about new mothers, single mothers, dead mothers, new mothers who were tricked by their partners into becoming mothers, soon to be mothers who didn't want to be mothers, mothers who had miscarriages, mothers with postpartum depression. It's just different forms and different colors of motherhood. In my review of this book, I wrote that when I was reading the book, I immediately thought of The Joys of Motherhood by Buchi Mecheta and Stay With Me by Obami Adebayo. And I am grateful to Debbie, for putting this collection in my hand. So the next book that I'll be talking about is She Called Me Woman, Nigeria's Queer Women Speak. So this collection was edited by Azina Muhammad, Chitra Nagaranjan, and Aisha Salau. And the book just has 194 ratings on Goodreads and 47 reviews. This is the first time that a collection of queer women's writing is coming out of Nigeria. I enjoyed reading this book because even what I thought I knew at the time was not sufficient to understand what it's like to be queer in Nigeria. So this book opened my mind to the experience of queer people in Nigeria. Another book that I would like to discuss is Prejudice, Bones in My Body, Essays on Muslim Racism, Bigotry and Spiritual Abuse by Zakia. This book has just 2 ratings on Goodreads and 1 review. So in this collection, Zakia discusses anti-black racism in, cultures that are non-black. So Arab, South Asian, that form the majority of the Muslim immigrant population in the West, but our experience focuses especially on the United States. She also included essays that tackled spiritual abuse amongst Muslims. It was just eye-opening to read someone's perspective on somebody that has been spiritually abused and how they managed to snatch themselves from that abuse and how they grew and how they rebuilt their relationship with their Lord, despite all of the damage that the abuse has done. So the last but definitely not the least in my recommendation is also a short story collection. I am sorry, but I read a lot of these books. Anyway, so this book is called A Bed for the King's Daughter by Shala Ujeli, translated by Sawad Hussein. A Bed for the King's Daughter just has 8 ratings on Goodreads with 2 reviews. A Bed for the King's Daughter is a collection of 22 short stories. And when I say short stories, I mean short stories. Like, that is one of the selling points of this book for me, because I enjoy short stories so much. And it sounds redundant actually, but that is what draws me to short stories. The fact that there's a lot left for you to imagine. Your brain is tasked into uprooting these hidden messages that the authors might be putting into their short stories. That is what drew me to this particular book. Some of them are short as a single page. Like, one of them is just 2 pages and it's just like 1, 2, and that's the story. Even though Ujeli, she is a Syrian writer, this anthology doesn't just focus on the Syrian narratives. There are stories that are retellings of even Greek mythologies. There are stories based on different parts of the world, based on different characters. There's even a retelling of Cinderella and her slipper. And that was the opening of this collection. And the title of that story is The Memoirs of Cinderella's Slipper. If you are the type that likes your stories to unfold properly, this might not be the book for you. But I believe that if you enjoy short stories normally, you would enjoy this book. I hope you would end up picking 1 or 2 or all of the books that I recommended. And happy International Women's History Month to you. It's nice to be a woman. It's nice to be a woman. Despite all of our struggles, we find solace in knowing that there are brilliant women writers out there telling our stories in all its different form, putting our experiences on paper, immortalizing our experiences. So yeah, definitely pick some of those books up because they are underrated and they deserve the world. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you've enjoyed this video and you've watched it up until this point, put the woman emoji in the comment section, and don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you in my next video.